I want to share a really special part of my life with you. Check it out. This is Little St. Mary's Church in Lexington, Illinois. When I say I'm from Lexington, a lot of people think I'm from Kentucky. This is where I first encountered Jesus. So you can see how tiny this little church is. This back here is the confessional, and there's some newer images here, but that beautiful bright blue is what I remember as a kid. So many memories. These Stations of the Cross, I remember coming here on Fridays during Lent and serving for those holding the crucifix. These really beautiful stained glass windows, the images in them. You see Jesus, the Good Shepherd. And just having those images in my little childlike mind. And of course, that's the crucifix that I got to carry as we processed in. Here's Jesus on the altar. And over here is one of my favorite images of Mary, Our Lady of Perpetual Help. You see how she's holding Jesus' hand so tightly. Jesus ran away from those angels who were holding the instruments of torture, and his little shoe fell off. It's a great image. I remember kneeling down right here during adoration. I was so proud of myself that I could swing the incense without coughing. I also remember during the time of consecration when the priest held the host up in elevation. But before he did that, before he was finished saying the words of consecration, I rang the bell and interrupted him. That wasn't good. And that image of Mary was the image that I grew up with, looking at. And in my mind, that's what Mary looks like. And I remember saying that to one of our seminarians who also went to this church. His grandma's from this same town, and he said the same thing. He said, yeah, me too. That's what I thought Mary looked like too. I think she does. I still think that's what she looks like. This sanctuary is where I stood as an altar server. This isn't the same lavabo bowl right here, but I remember holding that lavabo bowl here at the altar. It was the first time that I served all by myself. The other kid didn't show up to serve. Don't know who it was. And I was so nervous, I dropped the lavabo bowl onto the floor. Now, it didn't shatter because this is a carpet floor. But you know, Fulton Sheen has a similar story where he dropped the wine cruet on the marble floor of the cathedral and it shattered. And then the bishop came and he said, you know, you're going to grow up and be a bishop and even an archbishop. When I dropped the bowl, the priest just said to me, hey, you're going to go to St. Louis and Princeton. Just kidding, he didn't. And so looking out at the congregation, of course, this really beautiful view. There was a big family that would sit right there in that front row. They'd take up the whole row. Usually we'd sit back around there. And I remember my little brother Gary, one time, the priest would sometimes come down and give the sign of peace to people. And he felt left out, my little brother Gary, because the priest forgot he couldn't give everybody in the church the sign of peace. And so the priest turned back around and he went back and he shook Gary's hand. And that was the moment when we started to get a little bit more involved, and I became an altar server. By the way, that balcony, that higher railing didn't used to be there. One time a girl started to fall off and a guy grabbed her shoe or grabbed her foot and saved her from falling off. Exciting things happened in Lexington. So anyway, after I became an altar server, of course, this tiny little sacristy is where we would serve. We'd get ready. We'd put our albs on and we'd get our little cinctures. We just called them ropes back then. We didn't have a fancy name. And it was in this sacristy that a priest first said to me, hey, you should be a priest. And I thought, yeah, I should be a priest. So then I went back to my best friend Shane. We were in 4th grade. We were going to be inventors together. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't be an inventor with you. I'm going to be a priest. That was in 4th grade. I got older in junior high and high school and thought, well, can't really win a prom date or influence people when I'm talking about wanting to be a priest. So I kind of stuffed that down, and we see how good that went. So I'm sure many of you are remembering the church you grew up in, the church where you would go to Christmas Mass, and you're having beautiful memories of that. For me, I would come back to this church through seminary, and I would pray here, and the priests were so gracious, letting me just walk in the door and pray whenever I wanted. And Father Dave Sable, who is a good friend of mine, he's the pastor here, he lets me come in and say Mass. When I was the Nomad Vocation Director, I would come here on Christmas and say Mass. That was really a wonderful experience. And then just this morning, my mom and my little brother Gary loves Mass, but he can't really come to Mass very often. Anyway, they sat there, and I said Mass at the high altar. Great experience. And so all these memories, and of course, it's really hard for many people because you can't go into your church, or maybe you're away from family. You feel disconnected. It's good for us to remember. It's good for us to remember, of course, that Christmas story when God appeared to the world, not as this incredible, powerful judge or king, but as a little baby. It's good for us when we have that sadness to think of that sadness as that empty little manger, as we're awaiting that place in our heart to be fulfilled, because only God can fulfill it. It's good for us to pray for those who don't yet know Jesus, kind of like the wise men on their journey, seeking out the presence of God. And it's good for us to have a deep sense of hope that Christ, the King, will come, and he will make all things right. And at the end of time, there won't be any coronavirus. We won't feel disconnected. We will be united as long as we trust him, as long as we truly celebrate what Christmas is, which is the union of God and man, the manifestation of the glory of God, and it's our salvation. Thanks, guys. Pray for me, and I'll pray for you.